The crisp autumn air carried an unusual stillness across the Gobi Desert on October 12, 2027. Local herders first noticed the strange lights in the sky, thinking it might be a weather balloon or military test. By sunrise, the truth became clear. A massive silver ship shaped like a teardrop hovered just 100 feet above the sand. News spread quickly. Cell phone videos flooded social media before governments could contain the information. The world watched in stunned silence as the ship gently touched down, sending small dust clouds billowing across the desert floor. Within hours, military forces from China, Russia, and Mongolia established a perimeter. The United Nations called an emergency session, and a team of scientists, linguists, and diplomats was hastily assembled. Leading this team was Dr. Elena Voznesensky, a Russian-American xenolinguist who had spent her career developing theoretical frameworks for communicating with non-human intelligence. "We don't know if they understand the concept of nations or borders," Elena told the nervous UN representatives via video link. "We must present ourselves as one planet, one species." Her calm voice helped steady nerves in conference rooms around the world. 3 days passed with the ship remaining sealed. Military leaders grew anxious, but Elena insisted on patience. "They traveled across stars to find us. They can wait for us to be ready." On the 4th day, as morning sunlight painted the desert gold, a seam appeared in the ship's smooth hull. A ramp extended downward. Elena and her small team stood ready, heart monitors beeping rapidly beneath their clothes. The being that emerged walked upright on 2 legs, but looked nothing like humans expected aliens might. Standing nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent blue-green skin that shifted colors in the sunlight, Ambassador Zorn had 4 arms and a face featuring 3 large, pupil-less eyes arranged in a triangle pattern. The translator devices the team had prepared remained silent. They didn't need them. "We speak your languages," Zorn said in perfect English, voice surprisingly melodic. "We have studied your broadcast for decades." Elena stepped forward, hands open in the universal gesture of peace. "We welcome you to Earth." The conversation that followed changed human history forever. Zorn explained that Earth had been mapped by the Axian Galactic Empire centuries ago, but classified as pre-technological until our radio signals reached their monitoring stations. Now, with our development of early space travel, Earth had been reclassified as a developing world, eligible for Imperial membership. "You will benefit greatly," Zorn explained as they walked together across the desert sand. "Medical technology to extend your lives, energy systems to end your climate crisis, knowledge to reach nearby stars." Elena felt hope rising in her chest, but maintained her diplomatic caution. "And what does the Empire ask in return?" Zorn's skin rippled slightly, changing to a deeper blue. "Resources, primarily, compliance with Imperial regulations. Your world has much to offer, and the Empire rewards loyal members." That evening, as world leaders received Elena's report, celebrations erupted across the planet. Humanity was not alone, and our new galactic neighbors seemed friendly, even generous. Only Elena noticed the subtle way Zorn had avoided questions about other developing worlds and their experiences with Imperial membership. As she watched the alien ship gleaming under the desert moon, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's greatest challenge had just begun. The stars had finally answered our calls, but what was the true price of their attention? 6 months after the aliens' arrival, life on Earth had changed dramatically. Imperial technology appeared in hospitals, solving diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries. Their energy systems made electricity nearly free. Most people embraced our new galactic neighbors with open arms. Dr. James Chen didn't share this excitement. Working late in his lab at Beijing University, he compared the data from Imperial planetary surveys with Earth's own geological records. Something didn't add up. "This makes no sense," he muttered, rubbing his tired eyes. The Imperial scans showed strange energy signatures in Earth's crust that weren't on any human geological survey. These anomalies appeared at every location where the Empire had established cultural centers. James couldn't sleep that night. The next morning, he called an old college friend, Colonel Priya Adebayo of United Nations Intelligence. I need to show you something, he said, voice tight with worry. Not over the phone. They met at a small tea house in Shanghai, far from Imperial monitoring stations. James slid a tablet across the table. Look at these scans. They're searching for something specific in our planet's crust, and they're not telling us. Priya's face darkened as she studied the data. My team has noticed strange behavior at the centers too. Personnel rotating in and out at odd hours. Restricted areas our liaison officers can't access. Over the next week, they gathered a small, trusted team. A computer expert hacked into an Imperial data terminal during a power reset. What they found chilled them to the bone. Earth contained the highest concentration of an element called novium ever discovered by the Empire. This blue glowing metal, unknown to human science, was essential for faster-than-light travel. 1 pound was worth more than all the gold on Earth. They've found a treasure trove, whispered James as they reviewed the stolen files in an underground room, and we're sitting on top of it. The most disturbing discovery came from historical records. On every planet where valuable resources were found, the Empire followed the same protocol. Gradual population reduction through engineered diseases, fertility suppression, and controlled conflicts. Within 2 generations, native populations would be reduced to small, manageable workforces. They've done this 17 times before, Priya said, her voice breaking as she translated the alien text. The cultural exchange is just the first phase. Next comes population optimization, and then resource extraction. Security footage showed Imperial scientists collecting human DNA samples during medical treatments. They were already studying how to target human biology. Nobody will believe. Us, said Lin, their computer expert. The Empire has given us miracle cures and clean energy. Most governments are fully cooperating. Priya closed the stolen files and looked at each team member. Then we gather more proof. We build a case nobody can ignore. The Imperial ships have established 6 orbital stations already. Their main fleet arrives in 8 months. James stared at the glowing blue element on the screen. 8 months to save humanity from people who have conquered 17 worlds before us. 17 worlds that didn't know what was coming, Priya replied, determination hardening her voice. We have one advantage they never had. We've seen their playbook. That night, Operation Earth Defense began in secret. The clock was ticking, and the fate of billions hung in the balance. The massive Imperial carrier ships arrived one by one, positioning themselves in Earth's orbit like gleaming metal islands in the sky. Each week brought another vessel, until 6 orbital stations hung above the planet. Officials called them cooperation platforms for scientific exchange, but those who knew the truth saw them as the first step in Earth's colonization. As the shadows of Imperial ships darkened the skies, resistance sparked in unlikely places. A network began to form, connected by encrypted messages and midnight meetings. They called themselves Earth's Children, scientists who questioned the Empire's data, military personnel who noticed restricted zones growing larger, and every day, people who felt something wasn't right about our alien friends. In an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Tokyo, Dr. Amara Nkosi set up the first resistance lab. The brilliant Nigerian physicist had been working with Imperial technology through the exchange program. They watch everything I do in their facilities, she told the small gathering of trusted allies. But they don't know what I see when I'm watching them. Amara had smuggled out components from discarded Imperial devices, piecing together how their technology worked. Military strategists from 5 countries provided security protocols. Hackers created networks that couldn't be traced. Similar cells formed across the globe, in Buenos Aires, Nairobi, Vancouver, and Delhi. They shared discoveries through old-fashioned methods, handwritten notes, in-person meetings, and technology, too primitive for the Empire to bother monitoring. The breakthrough came 3 months after the resistance formed. Li Wei, a neuroscientist from Shanghai, noticed something strange while testing Imperial communication devices. The headset works perfectly for the aliens, she explained to the others gathered in the Tokyo hub. But when humans use it for more than 20 minutes, the signal degrades. Further tests revealed something remarkable. Human brainwaves generated patterns that created subtle interference with certain Imperial systems. It wasn't enough to break their technology completely, but it caused errors and glitches the longer humans interacted with it. "It's like biological static," Amara said, examining the readings. "And according to their medical database, we're the only species they've encountered with this neural pattern." The discovery ignited hope throughout the resistance. Lieutenant Raj Kumar, formerly of the Indian Air Force, leaned forward over the makeshift lab table. "Can we amplify this effect?" "Theoretically," Amara nodded, "if we could boost the signal strength and broadcast on the right frequency." They worked tirelessly, converting MRI machines to map the exact brainwave patterns that caused the interference. Volunteers spent hours connected to monitoring equipment. Each small success was celebrated like a major victory. "We've been looking at this all wrong," said Thomas Reynolds, an American electronics engineer, during a breakthrough moment. "We thought their technology was perfect, and we were primitive. But there's something in human biology they never accounted for, something they can't fully control." As the resistance grew, so did Imperial suspicion. Security tightened around alien facilities. Human workers were screened more thoroughly. The window of opportunity was closing fast. "We need to move faster," Amara told the Global Coordination Team during their weekly secure call. "The main Imperial fleet arrives in 3 months. By then, we need more than just theories. We need a weapon." The fate of humanity would depend on turning our greatest weakness, our biological difference from the Empire, into our greatest strength. Rain poured down in sheets over the Amazon rainforest as Imperial machinery cut through ancient trees. The Empire called it infrastructure development, but locals knew better. 3 massive excavators had arrived overnight, guarded by Imperial security forces in their gleaming blue armor. The Resistance had tracked Imperial geological surveys for weeks. This area contained the richest novium deposits on Earth. What the Empire called a processing facility would become the first large-scale mining operation, the beginning of the end for Earth. Ana Oliveira, who had farmed this land for 30 years, stood at the edge of the clearing with 200 local protesters. Behind them, a small resistance team hid in the dense foliage with equipment they'd been developing for months. "This is our home," Anna shouted through her megaphone. "You have no right to destroy it." The Imperial commander stepped forward, translator, device hanging from his neck. "This area has been designated for Imperial use. Please disperse peacefully." The protesters linked arms, forming a human chain. Imperial guards raised their stun weapons, painful but typically non-lethal. That way, resistance team in the trees watched, fingers hovering over their equipment controls. They needed a clear shot at the Imperial cruiser, hovering above the clearing, but weren't prepared for a direct confrontation yet. Everything changed in an instant. A young protester stumbled forward. A nervous guard fired. The stun blast hit the boy directly in the chest, stopping his heart instantly. Chaos erupted. Protesters surged forward in anger. Imperial guards fired indiscriminately. The resistance team had no choice. They activated their experimental weapons. The sound was barely audible to human ears, just a slight ringing. But the effect on the Imperial forces was immediate and dramatic. The aliens clutched their heads, dropping to their knees. Some vomited a strange blue liquid. Their neural systems, so different from human brains, couldn't handle the specific frequency targeted. At their central nervous system, "It's working," shouted Kaito, the Japanese audio engineer who had designed the sonic weapon. "Move in now." A small team of former military personnel rushed from the trees. 4 guards managed to fire their weapons, killing 2 resistance fighters before succumbing to the sonic attack. The human team pushed forward, stepping over writhing Imperial bodies heading for the cruiser. The main resistance force arrived, helping injured protesters while securing the area. The sonic weapons had an unforeseen effect. Imperial communication systems were failing too. No distress signals reached the orbital stations. Inside the cruiser, pilot Diego Suarez sat at the alien controls, sweat dripping down his face despite the cool air. Former flight engineer turned resistance fighter. He had studied Imperial flight systems in secret for months. "I think I've got it," he said, fingers dancing across strange symbols. The ship hummed to life, rising shakily into the rain-filled Sky. 17 resistance members and one captured Imperial officer were aboard, the first humans to control alien technology. The Empire's response came 3 hours later. 5 cruisers descended on the area, finding only abandoned equipment. Their fallen comrades and machinery had vanished. So had the ship. High in Earth's atmosphere, cloaked by technology barely understood by its new human crew, the captured cruiser headed for a secret base in the Himalayas. Inside it, Imperial navigation systems, weapons technology, and a living, breathing Imperial officer who knew the command codes for the orbital stations. The Empire had suffered its first defeat in centuries. In emergency meetings aboard the command station, Imperial leaders struggled to understand what had happened. How had primitive humans developed technology that could incapacitate Imperial forces? Their carefully laid plans were suddenly, unexpectedly, in jeopardy. The hidden mountain base buzzed with activity as hundreds of Earth's brightest minds worked around the clock. The captured Imperial cruiser sat in the center of the vast underground hangar, its sleek metal skin now covered with human, computers and testing equipment. Guards watched over the Imperial officer they'd captured, a being from a species called the Vril, now kept sedated but alive. Dr. Maya Okafor hadn't slept in 2 days. The renowned anthropologist from Kenya had been brought to the base immediately after the Brazil incident. With her unique background studying cross-cultural communication, she was tasked with making sense of the Imperial database they'd accessed through the ship's computers. "This is incredible," she whispered, scrolling through files showing 17 different alien species. "The Empire isn't one race, it's a collection of conquered worlds." Maya's assistant looked over her shoulder. "Like the Roman Empire from space." "Exactly. And look at this. Medical files on all 17 species." Maya pointed to brain scans that appeared strikingly similar, despite the physical differences between species. Their neural pathways all evolved along similar patterns, different from humans. Across the hangar, engineers tested various sound frequencies against materials from the ship. The sonic weapons used in Brazil had been primitive, effective, but limited in range. Now they understood why they worked. "It's like they're all instruments tuned to the same key," Maya explained to the coalition leaders gathered in the briefing room. All 17 Imperial species evolved in star systems with similar radiation patterns. Their brains process sensory input in nearly identical ways. She displayed human brain scans next to alien ones. "We developed on a planet with different background radiation. Our brains are wired differently. What hurts them barely affects us." General Navarro, who coordinated the coalition's military efforts, leaned forward. "Can we use this?" "We already are," replied Dr. Hideo Tanaka, the coalition's chief engineer. "We've developed sonic projectors that can disrupt their neural functions at a range of 5 kilometers. Completely harmless to humans." The next breakthrough came from the ship's communications array. A team led by communications expert Aisha Patel managed to decrypt the Imperial transmission protocols. "We can send a message directly to their central government," Aisha announced, excitement making her voice shake. "Not just to the ships orbiting Earth, to the heart of the Empire." The coalition debated for hours about what to say and who should say it. Eventually they agreed on a simple approach. Maya sat before the alien communication device, straightening her shoulders as cameras recorded. Behind her stood representatives from 12 nations, a unified human front. "To the leadership of the Axion Empire," she began, voice steady despite her racing heart. "We, the people of Earth, have discovered your true intentions for our world. We know about the Novium. We know about your plans for our population." She paused, allowing her words to translate through the Imperial system. "We have studied your biology and technology. We have developed defenses against your weapons. We do not wish for conflict, but we will protect our home." The message ended with a demonstration, a focused sonic pulse that temporarily disabled the communication device, proving their claims weren't empty threats. For 3 days, they received no response. Then, on the 4th morning, the Imperial ships in orbit began to move. Some descended toward Earth's surface, while others positioned themselves for what looked like an attack formation. The Empire had made its choice. Now humanity would have to prove it could back up its bold words. The War Council met in an abandoned salt mine 300 feet below the Swiss Alps. Representatives from every continent sat around tables made from shipping crates, studying holographic maps of Imperial ship positions. The mood was grim. Imperial forces had destroyed 2 resistance bases in the past week, killing hundreds. "We can't win a direct fight," said General Navarro, pointing to the orbital stations. "Their weapons can glass entire cities from space." Dr. Tanaka stood up, his normally calm face tight with exhaustion. "We don't need to fight them directly. The sonic technology works. We've proven that. But small-scale weapons won't save us from their fleet." "What are you suggesting?" asked President Chen of the Asian Coalition. "Something bigger." Tanaka gestured to his team, who unveiled a massive set of blueprints. "We've designed a global network of transmission towers that can broadcast the neural disrupting frequency across vast distances, potentially reaching their entire fleet." The room erupted in voices. Some called it impossible. Others demanded immediate action. Aisha Patel, now head of communications, raised her hand for silence. "We've already built a prototype in Antarctica. We can demonstrate its effectiveness before committing to the full network." 2 days later, with observers from every major government present, they activated the Antarctic transmitter. Its target, an unmanned Imperial scout ship monitoring Earth's southern ocean. The ship's sensors detected the transmission seconds before impact. Its engines flared as it attempted evasive maneuvers. Too late. The invisible wave hit, overloading its navigation systems. The scout spiraled downward, crashing into empty ocean. "It works," whispered Maya, watching through binoculars. "It actually works." Within hours, the coalition prepared their ultimatum. This time, they wouldn't just send a message. They would broadcast directly to the Imperial High Council itself, using frequencies stolen from the captured officers' communication device. In the transmission center, coalition leaders gathered behind Admiral Lucia Ortega, a respected naval commander chosen as humanity's spokesperson. "People of Earth," she began, addressing the cameras. "Today, we send our terms to those who would claim our world as their own." The signal beamed upward, bypassing the orbital stations, reaching across space toward the heart of the Empire. Admiral Ortega's face appeared on screens in the Imperial High Council chamber, shocking the assembled rulers of 17 worlds. "We know your intentions for our world," she said, her voice translated into Imperial Standard. "We know about the Novium, about your plans for our population. We have studied your physiology and found your weakness." She explained the sonic technology, demonstrating its effect on a piece of Imperial equipment. "We don't want war. We want peace, on our terms. Earth must be declared an autonomous zone, off-limits to Imperial harvesting. In return, we will not expand the range of our defensive systems beyond our solar system." The High Council watched, in stunned silence. Then laughter erupted, harsh clicking sounds from the Vril counselor. "Impossible," he declared. "No primitive species could develop such technology." "This is clearly a deception." The Grand Imperator raised a clawed hand for silence. "These humans are either lying or they've stumbled onto something dangerous. Either way, this insolence cannot stand." He leaned toward the communication device. "Your terms are rejected. The Empire does not negotiate with developing worlds." The transmission ended. On Earth, Admiral Ortega lowered her head briefly before looking up at her fellow humans. "They didn't believe us," she said quietly. "Now we show them." Dawn broke over a world holding its breath. Satellite images showed what everyone feared. The Imperial response fleet had arrived. 12 massive dreadnoughts, each larger than... A small city approached Earth in perfect formation. Smaller cruisers swarmed around them like angry wasps. "They're positioning for a simultaneous strike," said Commander Ortiz, studying the holographic display at Coalition headquarters. "Standard Imperial tactics. Hit everything at once. Overwhelm any defense." Across the globe, people huddled in makeshift shelters. Many prayed. Some simply held loved ones close. News channels broadcast the approaching fleet, visible now even to the naked eye, ominous shapes growing larger in the morning sky. In the command center, Dr. Tanaka performed final checks on the global transmission system. 23 stations had been built across Earth, hidden in mountains, deserts, and ocean platforms. Each contained technology reverse-engineered from the captured Imperial ship. "All stations report ready," said Tanaka, his voice steady despite the weight of 7 billion lives on his shoulders. "Power levels optimal, targeting systems locked." Admiral Ortega looked around the room at representatives from every continent. "This is our one chance. If this fails—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. President Khatri of the Indian Alliance placed her hand on the activation key beside Ortega's. "Together for Earth." One by one, leaders from every major region joined them. African Union, Pacific Coalition, European Federation, Americas United. Humanity stood as one. Transmission in 3, 2, 1. They turned the keys simultaneously. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. No sound, no flash of light. Just the quiet hum of computers and the rapid breathing of terrified humans watching the sky. In orbit, the effect was immediate and catastrophic. The lead dreadnought suddenly veered off course, its navigation systems overwhelmed by the signal, targeting its neural-based computers. Alarms blared throughout the Imperial fleet as crew members collapsed, their brains unable to process the targeted frequencies. The second dreadnought, trying to compensate, fired its thrusters at full power, directly into the path of the third. The collision was visible from Earth's surface, a silent flash that bloomed like a new star. "It's working," someone shouted. The command center erupted in cheers. The Imperial fleet fell into chaos. Ships drifted aimlessly. Some fired weapons at random, hitting their own vessels. 3 more dreadnoughts collided, creating a cascade of destruction. Then something unexpected happened. The transmission, amplified by the unique properties of Earth's magnetosphere, expanded beyond its intended range. Imperial communications across 2 entire sectors failed simultaneously. Supply convoys lost guidance. Orbital stations around distant worlds went dark. In the Grand Throne Room of the Imperial Palace, 12 light-years from Earth, the Grand Imperator watched in disbelief as communication screens flickered and died. For the first time in his 300-year reign, he felt a cold sensation that took him moments to identify. Fear. "Impossible," he whispered, his 4 hands gripping the arms of his throne. How could they do this? His chief scientist, trembling visibly, studied emergency reports. "Their brains are different, Your Eminence. They can transmit and withstand frequencies that devastate our neural patterns. This weapon, we have no defense against it." On Earth, as Imperial ships retreated or drifted helplessly in orbit, celebrations began cautiously. Humanity had stood against the greatest power in the galaxy, and won. "They'll be back," Admiral Ortega reminded her colleagues as they monitored the retreating ships. "But next time they'll come to talk, not conquer." For the first time in the Empire's 12,000-year history, it faced a species with a genuine defensive advantage, a tiny blue world that refused to be just another conquered planet. The massive Imperial flagship emerged from lightspeed at the edge of Earth's solar system, alone, without the battle fleet everyone expected. The vessel's sleek, midnight blue hull reflected starlight as it approached the hastily constructed space station, floating between Earth and Mars. Inside the station, Earth's delegation prepared for humanity's first formal negotiation as equals, with the Empire. Admiral Ortega straightened her uniform, touching the small photograph of her family tucked in her pocket. "They're docking," announced Captain Reza, monitoring the approach screens. "Just one shuttle, 6 life forms aboard." The human delegation consisted of leaders from each continent, key scientists, and 3 individuals with a gift nobody had anticipated. Ling Mei, Alejandro Vega, and Nadia Onyekachi had been working with Imperial technology when something strange happened. They began hearing thoughts. Not just human thoughts, but alien ones too. When the Imperial delegation entered, the room fell silent. High Commander Varix stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 6 limbs and skin that shifted between copper and gold. His ceremonial armor gleamed, with symbols of conquered worlds. "I speak for the Grand Imperator," he announced, voice translated by devices on both sides. "We come to discuss the situation." Admiral Ortega stepped forward. "We appreciate your willingness to meet. This station represents neutral ground. No weapons, no advantage to either side." The negotiations began stiffly. Imperial demands for access to Earth's novium deposits were met with flat refusals. Humans insisted on complete autonomy. The Empire offered limited self-governance under Imperial oversight. Throughout the tense exchange, Ling Mei sat quietly, her eyes never leaving Varix. She could sense his emotions, frustration, contempt, but underneath it all, genuine fear. The Empire had never encountered a species it couldn't dominate. During a break, she whispered to Admiral Ortega, "He's hiding something. They're more desperate than they're showing." When the talks resumed, Ortega changed tactics. "Let me be direct. Commander, we know the Empire's faster-than-light engines require novium. We know your supplies are dwindling, and we now know that your eastern frontier faces rebellion from 3 systems." Varix's skin flashed bright orange. Shock. "How could you possibly—" "We have capabilities you don't understand," Ortega said simply, nodding toward Ling Mei and the other telepaths. "Just as our brains resist your technology, they've developed in unexpected ways since contact." The revelation visibly shook the Imperial delegation. Varix conferred with his advisors in hushed tones before turning back to the humans. "What exactly do you propose?" he asked, his translator unable to hide the tension in his voice. Admiral Ortega displayed a star map highlighting Earth's solar system. This entire system becomes a protected zone. No Imperial presence allowed, no mining, no interference in our development. We retain the right to expand to neighboring systems as our technology allows. And in return, Varix's multiple eyes narrowed. "We limit the range of our disruptive broadcasts to defensive purposes only. We consider opening diplomatic and trade relations with the Empire as equals. And we keep the true extent of our telepathic capabilities confidential." The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Finally, exhausted but successful, both sides reached agreement. The human delegation watched from the station's observation deck as Varix's shuttle returned to the Imperial flagship. "Do you think they'll honor it?" asked Dr. Tanaka. Ling Mei smiled faintly. "They know what happens if they don't. I made sure Varix understood exactly what we're capable of." As the Imperial ship disappeared into lightspeed, humanity faced a new reality. No longer alone, no longer defenseless, and never again to be underestimated. 3 months after the negotiations, Imperial ships returned to Earth's solar system. This time they came not as conquerors, but as engineers. Massive vessels positioned themselves at the edges of the solar system, deploying glowing beacons the size of small moons. Each beacon broadcast the same message in thousands of languages. "Earth, off-limits by Imperial decree." On the gleaming capital world of the Empire, 12 light-years away, the Grand Imperator signed the official declaration with visible reluctance. His 4 hands trembled slightly as he pressed his seal into the document. Earth would be classified as a protected independent world, the first such designation in Imperial history. "This sets a dangerous precedent," warned his chief advisor. "What happens when other worlds learn that resistance is possible?" The Imperator's skin darkened to a deep purple, the color of rage. "They must not learn of it." But secrets rarely stay hidden in a galaxy connected by trade and travel. Within 6 months, whispers spread through Imperial territories. The story grew with each telling, how tiny humans had stood against the Empire and won. How they possessed minds that could not be controlled. How they had forced the mighty Imperator himself to back down. On Talaris, an agricultural world stripped of resources for 3 centuries, workers began humming a strange new song with lyrics about a blue planet, where people stood tall. In the mining colonies of Drexus IV, overseers reported increasing instances of disobedience, with captured rebels found carrying crude symbols of Earth. Back on our planet, humanity stepped into a new era. The Imperial cultural centers closed. The ships departed. For the first time in a year, Earth belonged fully to humans again. At the United Nations headquarters in New York, now rebuilt after the brief orbital bombardment during the conflict, Admiral Ortega addressed representatives. "From every nation, "We remain a young species," she said, her voice carrying to millions watching worldwide. "But today we have earned something precious, the right to determine our own future." Scientists continued studying the unique properties of human brainwaves that had saved the planet. The telepathic abilities that had emerged in some humans grew stronger. Research facilities across the globe worked to understand and develop these new capabilities. In orbit, construction began on Earth's first true deep space vessels, incorporating modified Imperial technology. Humanity would venture to the stars on its own terms. 6 years after first contact, an unexpected visitor arrived at the edge of the solar system, a small transport ship carrying refugees from Kaldor, a world under harsh Imperial rule for generations. "We seek asylum," their leader transmitted as Earth's defense systems tracked their approach. "We heard that humans help those who wish to be free." The ship was allowed to land. More followed. Earth became not just a symbol, but a sanctuary on the distant worlds throughout the galaxy. Beings looked to the night sky, searching for a small blue dot most couldn't even see. They whispered its name like a prayer, a promise that freedom was possible. And in the Imperial Palace, the Grand Imperator stared at reports of growing unrest across his vast territories, wondering how one insignificant planet of stubborn, biologically unique beings had changed everything. Earth had not just saved itself, it had lit a flame that would spread across the stars.